More than 100 state legislators from over 20 states have joined activists in Washington pushing for voting reform legislation. They're urging senators to pass the For the People Act, which is aimed at protecting voting rights. It would block several state-imposed voting restrictions introduced this year. The legislation has stalled in the Senate for weeks, but supporters hope it will be passed before the August recess. Florida is one state with new voting restrictions, including drop box limitations, a ban on ballot collection, and additional requirements for voting by mail. We've also been following Florida recently as it deals with record COVID cases. Governor Ron DeSantis has said COVID-19 vaccines are, quote, saving lives and residents should get vaccinated. But he has thwarted other efforts to slow down the spread of the virus, including barring masks in schools and refusing to reinstate social distancing guidelines. He has also attributed the state's high number of coronavirus infections to the warm weather. Florida State Representative Anna Eskamani is one of the lawmakers rallying on Capitol Hill, and she joins me now from Washington. Representative, welcome. Why do you believe talks have stalled on Capitol Hill? And do you think your presence alongside other state legislators will change the political dynamics on this issue?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Elaine. And yes, I do think the presence of more than 100 state lawmakers from across the country will have an impact because we bring with us the experiences of voter suppression on the ground in state capitals. And it's really important that U.S. senators hear these stories and also face the reality that if we don't pass a national standard for voting rights, we're going to continue to see suppression become the reality. And indeed, the Republican majority is the reason why in my state these voter suppression bills pass. And it is the Republican minority in the U.S. Senate that is part of the reason why we haven't seen these reforms. So it's really important that we put the pressure on and continue to push for voting rights.
I want to get to Republicans in just a moment, but with the Biden administration, what more do you think the White House can do?
It's a great question. We've been making an ask to the White House as well, because the reality is that the Biden administration has priorities. And of course, we know there are many issues right now that we have to figure out, including the Delta variant. In my own home state of Florida, we are surging and we have an eviction crisis alongside a broken unemployment system. We also have the infrastructure deal. We want the White House to remember that it's not just about the infrastructure of our roads, it's also the infrastructure of our democracy.
Well, Republican lawmakers who oppose the For the People Act have said it will take away states' rights to set election laws, and at least 2 Democratic senators do not agree with the bill's attempt to eliminate the filibuster. What's your response to those criticisms?
The overwhelming majority of Americans want these changes. They want to see elections be fair and accessible. They don't want to see partisan gerrymandering. They don't want to see efforts to make it harder for young people, people with disabilities, seniors to vote. So I tell all members of Congress to not listen to the politicking, but listen to the people in your states and what they're demanding of you. And this isn't about taking away rights from states. This is about giving rights back to the people of this country.
Well, what restrictions are Florida voters currently facing, and how would the For the People Act change that?
It would be a game changer for us in Florida. This past legislative session, Governor Ron DeSantis signed a voter suppression bill called Senate Bill 90 to a live Fox News only audience. It was a completely politically motivated legislation to make it harder for folks to vote by mail and even harder to register new voters to actually be able to participate in democracy. We also have partisan gerrymandering in Florida where lawmakers draw their own maps. So we're approaching that redistricting process this year. For the People Act would help address many of those problems, but not only ending political gerrymandering, but also putting into place automatic voter registration, strengthening the Voting Rights Protection Act that we already have in this country, and overall help to ensure that no matter where you live in this great nation, you will have access to the polls.
Well, let's talk about the pandemic. There have been record numbers of infections and hospitalizations in Florida. Why do you think cases are spiking in your state? And is there a plan in place for getting more people vaccinated?
We have been incredibly frustrated and disappointed by Governor Ron DeSantis and his mismanagement of COVID-19 from the very beginning. my office of 2 people have managed more than 45,000 unemployment claims. We've hosted vaccination events across our district as well and continue to push the governor to choose science over politics. And yet this past Friday, he actually put into place an executive order prohibiting local governments from pursuing mask mandates in our schools, which has created so much pain and struggle for families who want their kids to be in a classroom but are now scared for their health and safety.
So, Governor DeSantis has talked about vaccines saving lives. He also, though, says Florida will not shut down, and he's blocked mask mandates in schools, as you said. So how do you think overall the governor has handled the pandemic? You touched on that a moment ago. I'm wondering how his leadership, you think, has affected your constituents.
We are hearing so much struggle from the people of Florida, in particular from the health crisis and the economic crisis. When it comes to how Governor Ron DeSantis has managed this, he's running for political office, not just re-election, but he's setting himself up potentially to run for president. So he's more catering to a conservative base over all the people of Florida. And as a result, he's providing a platform to leading disinformation and misinformation pundits versus scientists. And though he has said vaccines save lives, he's done nothing else to promote vaccines. And of course, when it comes to other preventative measures like masks, he's actually demonized them versus prioritized them as a tool for safety.
All right, Florida State Representative Anna Eskamani, thank you very much for your time.